is on the traditional territory of the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation and Algonquin peoples. And to them I say miigwech, and deep appreciation for the extraordinary patience and tolerance and wisdom that we receive through our association with the Algonquin Nation, miigwech.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Just some rules of order and engagement. We're trying to, as much as possible, recreate a real town hall, in-person town hall, which means, we're not trying to put in any types of restrictions. The chat is open for anyone to have conversations in there. You can also put your questions in there. I have Marlene and Randy helping me in the background. They'll make sure that I get the questions. For those folks who don't want to answer them directly or ask them directly, if you do want to ask your questions directly, please put up your virtual hand, and that'll put you in the queue. And you can choose to turn on your video when you ask your question. If you don't want to turn on your video, that's fine as well. Please keep your questions short. We want to try to obviously get in as many questions as we can for both Jonathan and Elizabeth. Let's obviously keep everything polite and respectful, have a nice, relaxed, inviting, and casual atmosphere for everyone. And other than that, I'm just here to moderate and make sure that we stay on time and that the questions roll through. Other than that, I really want to treat it like a town hall where, imagine yourselves in line at the mic, like we've seen in town halls, and you'll get your chance to ask your questions and keep them short. And nothing's off the table. I've been told by Jonathan and Elizabeth, nothing, as long as it's respectful, and no questions off the table. They're here to answer all the tough questions that you want to ask. Other than that, why don't we start with introductions? I'm Najib Jutt. I'm here on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta. I live here with my wife and my 2 daughters. I'm a management consultant and political advisor. I've been doing that work for the past 20 years or so. It doesn't feel like it. Well, the political stuff feels like 100 years, but the other stuff doesn't feel like it. I became a Green member about 2 years ago when I started looking for a more permanent political home. I was mostly nonpartisan in most of my political work. And I was really attracted to the Green Party because of its principles and the Global Greens Charter and all of the wonderful stuff I saw happening for the Green parties around the world. And I'll pass it on to Elizabeth for her introduction.
After a year, or no, 2 years of Zoom, you'd think I know how to unmute. C'est en parlement dit vous êtes Ondine. Oh, wait, Soudine. So I'm not Soudine anymore. I will be very brief in my introduction. I'm very, very grateful to those of you who are joining tonight. It's very difficult to find opportunities for a direct conversation among Greens. And as you know, I'm honored to be offering my services to the Green Party of Canada membership, and in the context of presenting the option of a structural change to co-leadership. And I'm really hoping tonight that you'll see and hear more of Jonathan Pedneault than you see and hear from me. Merci. Miigwech. Ishka.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Go ahead, John.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see a few faces I recognize from my times in BC and also in Ontario. I'm speaking to you from Ottawa on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe. It's a real pleasure to have a chance to interact with you. I know the last few weeks have been difficult. I know a lot of questions. Probably a lot of people have a lot of questions about the state of the party, the state of this race. Elizabeth and I have been meeting with some of you already, explaining what our vision for the party. Some of you know about me, others don't. So allow me for a short introduction. I'm from Quebec, as you can probably hear with my accent, from the South Shore of Montreal. I've spent the better part of the last 14 years working in various conflict areas as a journalist, but also as a human rights investigator. I've led teams of local journalists in extremely demanding and trying circumstances in the Central African Republic and South Sudan. Most recently, I was documenting the conflict in Ukraine, and that was a very powerful reminder of how unstable our world currently is as we edge towards the climate precipice and need clear active and rapid climate action. On a global scale, we're faced with a crumbling of the international order that we inherited from the Second World War. And meanwhile, in Canada, we have, for the past 8 years, have had a government that's consistently behind the curve. The Green Party is the only party that has repeatedly been honest with Canadians about the reality of the challenges that we will face and are now facing. Of course, my thoughts go to Anna as well. I'll be heading towards the Maritimes on Monday to assess some of the damage and show solidarity to our fellow Canadians out there. Yeah, I look forward to engaging and answering any questions you may have. Thanks.
All right, let's get into it. So if you have a question, you want to take the mic, please put up your virtual hand and you'll be in the queue. We already have a question from Fraser, and I'm assuming if you put your question in the chat that you want me to ask the question. So I will ask the question. Fraser says, when I joined the Green 16 years ago, the main focus was Mother Earth. We also had the same principles. Why have we spiraled so far from Mother Earth? Nothing else matters if she dies. Jonathan, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Fraser. Very clearly, and that's something that I've seen in so many places. I started my career internationally in Chad, in the Sahel, which is a place that's very much affected and has long been affected by the climate emergency, with growing desertification, with a number of rivers and lakes drying up, literally, and that has been causing a number of conflicts. These conflicts, for survival between various groups, of course, bring about political instability and war. I think we know that there will be more and more extreme weather events. We know that this will likely mean the destruction of the social net and the social fabric of our countries. And in a context where individuals are pitted against one another in the search for resources, of course, nothing else matters. It's so crucial that we act quickly in order to transition our economies away from fossil fuels and away from the system that is basically feeding on us but isn't feeding us back, and meanwhile is squeezing us for time and pushing us into easy solutions that are contributing to the climate emergency. But in order to do that, we also need to make sure that we take everyone alongside with us. We need to be inclusive. That is very much a key of the green values, inclusivity, diversity, and we need to make sure that we don't push people away. Everyone is in the same boat, and we need to make sure that there's enough space in that boat for everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm going to let you give you a chance to answer this, Elizabeth, but I'm going to put in a little curveball because this is your wheelhouse. So not just that, Elizabeth, but how do we make people care? Every time something happens, like Pakistan flooding and what we see happening in Puerto Rico, and it just doesn't seem, you think this will be the event that will make people care about the climate crisis. So if you could answer Fraser's question, but also answer that.
Yeah, I'm going to answer Fraser's question by saying, I don't know that we have strayed from our values, and I don't know that we've stopped caring about Mother Earth, because the question is, what we are we talking about? When I talk to members of the Green Party, nobody. When I talk to members of the Green Party of Canada, when I'm traveling, when I'm out and about in places like the fall fairs in my own riding, Saanich Fair and Salt Spring Fair, people don't want to talk about anything other than real issues and the real emergency, and that we have to stop the war on Mother Earth. I speak in those terms. When I opened Saanich Fair, I said that as a member of Parliament for Saanich Gulf Islands, I didn't feel my job was just to represent the human beings in Saanich Gulf Islands, but also the whales and the salmon and the trees, that we speak for all our relations, and that includes non-human species and all of creation and all life on Earth and Mother Earth herself. So I don't know that we have strayed, but our reputation has been damaged. And we did a press conference this week. We, being the caucus, Amita Kuttner, Mike Morris, and me, we talked about were these issues. We didn't get press coverage on that. The press coverage was on the idea that there were issues in the party that were internal and I didn't know anything about them. So to your question, Najib, getting people to care, I don't think so many people do, but it's just below the surface. And what I try to do when I talk to people who are thinking about other issues as being more important is just try to refocus, to say, well, yes, that, whatever that is really important and we have to deal with it. Like Jonathan and I often do is, but yes, inflation is really important, but you do see that it's climate crisis that's also driving inflation. And we do know that we're facing, I think people, so I want to be really short about this, Najib. I'd say with your curveball, I think people do care, but you sometimes have to bring it up and lift it up so people can say, yes, I do care. I don't think we get anywhere by saying, you should care. You have to say, you already care. Let's help get through this together.
Thank you. Again, a reminder, if you want to ask a question directly, just put up your virtual hand, but I'm happy to read out questions as well. Trevor Hancock is asking, similar to Fraser, how does the party move past the toxic mess of gender and identity politics and pronoun wars and deal with what matters? Jonathan?
Yeah, well, once again, I think one has to look at the work and the incredible work that Elizabeth and Mike are doing in the House. We're a political party. We need to get more people elected, and we need to push our agenda in the House of Commons. This is where so much of the work, carries, and this is where we can have concrete climate action. Of course, there have been a number of incidents that Trevor you're referring to. These are internal matters, and I think these are matters that we need to address internally as much as possible. Just like the rest of Canadian society, this party is dealing with a number of issues, what I'd call growth spurs or growth pains in many ways. We're reckoning with the fact that in our society, a number of people have felt isolated and not listened to. And that requires listening from everyone involved in these matters. I don't think the party is exceptional in any way. These are issues that the Liberal and the Conservative and the Neo Democrats are also reckoning with. Unfortunately, in our case, we have people who feel very free to go to the media and to go to on various platforms to address these issues that would be best addressed internally. Now, I want to recognize the fact that for the past 2 years, in parts because of the pandemic, we've had large numbers of people who have donated so many hours of their time to the party, but have done so through Zoom calls. There's been a lot, most of our council, most of the people involved in positions of authority in this party have never met in person. So there is not this essential basis of trust to make decisions. It doesn't exist, and it's very much our job as as the next leaders or whoever becomes leader to make sure that all of these people meet in one place and that we can iron out some of these misunderstandings. I believe most of what has transpired is a result of misunderstandings and is a result of inexisting trust, which wasn't there because it was never allowed to be built. All of these people were catapulted into decision-making positions after quite a few traumatizing events, especially with the 2021 election, and felt an immense responsibility upon their shoulders, but were never able to actually meet with one another and share a beer or share a meal. All of these things that are so essential in order for concrete good communication to happen. And hopefully now with the pandemic, hopefully starting to, we're perhaps not quite out of the woods yet, but it's certainly easier nowadays to have in-person meetings, and that's exactly what we're committing to making sure happens as soon as possible.
Thanks, Jonathan. There's definitely a theme emerging in the next few questions, all about the internal stuff that's happening. Elizabeth, you're one of the few people that's been around from the beginning, so you know what the history is. So let's give the members some satisfaction here. Christine asks, speaking of structural change, what do the co-leaders think are the GPC structural changes members should consider?
Okay, and of course I haven't been around as well. Trevor Hancock and I first met in 1980 when we were both working on what was initially not intended to be a new political party, but a beau geste in the 1980 election called the Small Party. I won't digress into that history to save time. But it was Trevor who realized this could become a real political party. And I said, sorry, I can't help. I'm going to law school. I came back around in 2006, but there's a lot of history there. Next year is actually our 40th birthday as a party, as we were officially formed in 1983. So I'd say that in that time, we've achieved a tremendous amount, and I think we forget this, as so we don't even tell ourselves this as Greens. Of all of the Green parties around the world, plagued with the perverse first past the post voting system, we've done better than anybody else. And I think recent troubles, and not as I completely agree with what Jonathan said, a lot of it was we weren't together, we weren't in the same room, people didn't form relationships of trust and friendship and so on. So structural changes, the way Christine's question is phrased, it assumes a structural change, which is that Jonathan and I believe the party will be better governed and better representing our values as leaders by moving the party's constitution to co-leadership. I won't go into depth on this, but I am currently co-chair of the Global Greens Parliamentarians Association. There are 400 elected Green MPs around the world in many different countries. There are 80 Green parties around the world. I won't go through all the stats, but a significant chunk of those Green parties around the world either started with co-leaders or moved to co-leadership, as the Greens of England and Wales have done. And one of the reasons for that is that when you are a grassroots party and your leader's job is to be the chief spokesperson for the party and to work in a role of service, hopefully some inspiration, mobilization, rah, let's pull together kind of motivation. In that context, one person can't represent that notion of distributed leadership that you get with two people. So there's a constitutional change that we anticipate, and it will be up to the members to decide if they want that constitutional change. We will start out if one of us is elected leader, and I am asking all of you, asking Greens everywhere and Canadian Greens to put Jonathan's name first on the ballot and please me second. And if one of us becomes leader, the other one will be appointed deputy leader under our current rules while we work forward. But there are a lot of other structural changes. One glaring example is that Mike Morris and I, as MPs, or before our caucus in 2019, Paul Manley and Jenica Atwin and I were completely outside any loop of the council or the fund or anybody. So we didn't know what was going on. Yet if somebody is exposed to bad media because something just happened in the Green Party, the go-to people for the media are your elected MPs, who if you look at an organizational chart of the Green Party today, you won't even find a dotted line between the elected MPs in Parliament and any other part of the party. So that bears some examination, and that's like the Greens of England and Wales have gone through a 2-year consultative process, and they have a huge set of what I think are very good recommendations. Maybe our members would rather we went through a 2-year consultative process before making structural changes in our constitution. But personally, I think we need to have all entities of the party, and now there are more than there used to be, talking to each other and finding through our values consensus decisions and making a pledge to each other, which is essentially embedded in law now, that if you're a member of a board of an organization, you have a fiduciary duty to that organization. Well, that isn't particularly well understood right now, but if the fund, the council, the caucus, shadow cabinet, local EDAs in some form, there are many different elements of the party that right now are more or less in silos. And I think we need to think about a structure that allows the principles of the party to be operative. And the number one principle in the way our Constitution is structured is that the highest level of authority in the party are all the members when assembled in a BGM. But all the members every single day can't show up for work and tell people what to do. So we have to, it's a figuring out process, but the structural issues to me flow from our values. and making sure that that the structure of the party doesn't get in the way of the objective of electing Green MPs so that we can arrest the climate crisis before it ends life on Earth.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm just going to skip over Colin's question because it takes us in a bit different direction and come back to it. Renata, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's a beautiful name, but I might be pronouncing it wrong. Renata Hempel is asking, does the Green Party need more structural change? Is the membership governed? And goes on to clarify, does the Green Party need more structural change? Is membership government still working? Or should committees and leaders take more charge? I think you've answered this a little bit, but maybe if we could just address that directly for Renata as well. So should committees and leaders take charge? Is membership government still working? You're muted.
I don't know if Jonathan wants to go first. Jonathan and I may slightly disagree on this, so let's get that out there. I think it's a really good thing that the leader doesn't have authority in a top-down setting. I think the problem is, does governance by our grassroots still work? I guess I'd ask the question, when was it working? It has worked. I mean, I was leader from 2006 to 2019, and I think we accomplished a lot and did really well. But this is really, it's hard to say that day to day, the membership was in control. I think we need to do one thing that was eliminated a while ago was the nominations committee, to make sure that the people who were put forward to be elected to federal council had some kind of oversight for, well, let's make sure we've got a skills balance here. So let's make sure, if we can, let's find an accountant and let's find a lawyer, and let's make sure that we've got some diversity that's cultural and reflective of the Canadian identity. All those pieces don't just spring up ad hoc. You have really good people who are running for federal council every single time. But the kind of council you get over the years, we've had a slippage, and it doesn't really help represent what the grassroots want when there's a lot of overturn and people don't get the proper training. Now, I see that Sheila and Trevor agree. It doesn't say how we get out of this toxic mess. I think number one, and I will say this, when we sit together in council and understand what in camera means, we're able to make decisions. Full transparency every single day doesn't necessarily help make good decisions, particularly where you're dealing with individuals, personnel issues, etc. That said, the party needs to be fully informed. Council has a right to have full financial information. So how do we get out of this toxic mess? I don't think the mess is all that toxic. I think a handful of incidents are being exaggerated in the media. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Jonathan, I'm going to let you weigh in. So number one, what are some of the structural changes that you think need to happen? Number two, Trevor's asking again, how does the party move past the toxic mess?
Thanks, Najib, and thanks for the question. You know, Elizabeth and I actually agree quite a bit on that question, even though we may come at it from a different perspective. I think it's very important that any form of power within any organization is counterbalanced by something else. I believe in checks and balances, but I also believe in accountability. And I think that when we have people who are in any position of responsibility in this organization, there are fiduciary responsibilities to the organization as a whole, but then there are also legal responsibilities as you know, and that was relevant in some of the things that we saw recently. That you also have legal responsibilities as an employer of certain individuals or as a contractor of certain people. This is a, you know, our party and its fund are legal entities that comes with legal responsibilities that need to be taken extremely seriously. I think I think we have a clear lack of delineation when it comes to the areas of responsibility for these various entities that are managing our party right now. Lorraine, our former president, mentioned a few times that when she became president, there was no TOR for that position, and there was a need to establish exactly what the terms of reference would be as president of this party. I think there's a lot of work that we, with the members, need to do to clarify what the areas of responsibility are for each of the constituting bodies of this party. There is a need, in my opinion, for the party to back its MPs and to back its caucus. It's so crucial that decisions be taken with consent of the various people it affects. That applies to all of all of the constituting bodies in this party, but especially our caucus, which, as you know, is responsible for defending the party and its policies in Parliament, but also is the one which, at the end of the day, most of the time, and certainly in a well-functioning party, will be the one responding to media queries. We elect people and we select people as candidates because of their ability to deal with media, to deal with opposing parties, and to deal with the public in general. And we should hopefully, as a party, trust their judgment in doing that. I would be very happy if we had the structures that actually backed that caucus, and I think we need to make sure that happens. How do we move past the toxic mess? I'm not sure the mess is that toxic. Once again, I think we have various conflicts of personality, various identity issues that, again, are very much present throughout Canadian society right now. They only happen to become extremely public in our case because we have people who have not been properly trained on their own fiduciary responsibility to this party when they came in their position. I think it's very important that training takes place, that there are a clear delineation of responsibilities, and especially that we create loyalty and a desire to stay and stick around. I think, there's been positions on the council and positions on the fund are voluntary, and they're extremely difficult, and they've been extremely difficult for the past 2 years because the party's been faced with a number of crises. We have extremely dedicated individuals who, again, have been spending hours and hours on end on Zoom calls. They get very little reward for the hard work that they do, aside from the occasional angry email from members. And I think we need to create a structure that where people not only trust one another, but also find joy in being a part of it. And that demands inspiration. That demands that we are able to shift the narrative with the media. And the best thing that could help us do that is prevent the types of leaks and the types of statements that we've seen over the past 2 weeks by individuals who are not and should not be in a position of talking to media. Again, we have elected MPs and we have elected public-facing figures for a reason, and that reason is that they should be the ones having these discussions with media. Elizabeth and Mike and Namita were on Parliament Hill yesterday, and they were presenting the priorities of the caucus. And once again, media, and let's be clear here, media is not our friend, generally speaking. At least not and I say that as a former journalist. Media is trying to find every little possible story to discredit us, and so we have to be careful. We have to think through. I'd like to answer Colin's question as well, because I think that links to.
Hold on.
But
Hold on
perhaps
a second. Okay.
I'll let
Hold
you.
on. Yeah, please. So a couple of things. So first of all, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll moderate the questions if that's okay. Let's refrain from replying in the chat, because that's distracting and disrespectful to the person who's speaking. Let's keep the focus on people who are speaking. Let me do my job. I'll make sure all the questions are answered. We did promise everyone attending an open and honest and raw conversation, and I intend to deliver that. So we will answer all questions in the interest of time. But okay, so if you're done, Jonathan, I'll go back to Colin's questions. So Colin's asked a couple questions. His first one is, how do you square charging the party with not providing a safe space to work, and yet still insist on continuing the leadership race before resolving this problem? So I think this is deserving of some attention and reply. So again, how do you square charging the party with not providing a safe space to work, and yet still insist on continuing the leadership race before resolving this problem? I'll throw it over to you, Elizabeth.
I don't think we have charged the party with not creating a safe space to work. What we attempted to do, and I think it's worth having this conversation. I've tried, and I want to thank Colin, because some people may not know that Colin is from the riding of Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes, which is Lorraine Reckman's riding, where she's done us the honor of representing the party in a number of elections. And I think it's worth, it may take some time to walk through this, Najib, but stop me if you think I've gone on too long. We, as candidates for leadership, plus Mike Morris, were distressed that we were beginning to get a lot of media questions about an effort to force Lorraine to resign over what I thought was never something that she should have been apologizing for. She put a tweet out that said she apologized to our leader, et cetera, et cetera. I think you all remember that. That all happened on a Saturday. By Tuesday, it wasn't going away. By Monday, it wasn't going away. By Labor Day, it wasn't going away. And I was going to get media questions. I didn't want to answer media questions about something that occurred that I'd not been part of, but I wanted to put it to one side. I thought, and we began talking. Now, this is an interesting thing about a leadership race. In other parties, they don't convene the leaders to all have a chat and get to know each other. But the Leadership Contest Committee had convened a regularly scheduled meeting for Sunday morning, which I was able to attend. And it was all leadership candidates plus the Leadership Contest Committee members. And the discussion ended up focusing quite a lot on what had happened the day before. And that led to an unusual event. Let's face it, most political parties, if you're running against each other, Jean Charest and Pierre Poilievre weren't sitting down on Sunday to chat with party leadership about how they should run the leadership race. They were already at it, trying to draw blood. But we were getting to know each other better. And that led us as leadership candidates to say, we don't want to be drawn into this. We don't want media saying that we're all at each other's throats. Let's get rid of that narrative by showing some unity. That leadership at that point, we thought all six of us plus Mike Morris could say to the media, look, we have confidence in our federal council. We support our president, Lorraine Reckmans. We support Natalie Odd, who's been doing amazing work on Leadership Contest Committee. At the same time, we know this isn't the first time that our leader has felt that they were not being treated respectfully. Let's deal with that through some restorative process off to the side. In other words, we didn't call for an investigation. We didn't say there's a big legal issue. We said, look, let's try to find a healing process. Let's park this issue and not have it become a media issue. Our statement actually worked exactly as I had hoped. It didn't generate any media interest at all. Unfortunately, it created a cascading, escalating internal crisis, which led to Lorraine's resignation on the very issue Colin questions, which is, how can you run a leadership race if all this is going on? Well, how do you not run a leadership race? You're a federal political party. Your constitution says you have a leadership race. The leadership race is completely separate from the other events, such as, you know, the campaign launch event, which attracted 130 Greens and wouldn't have been noticed by anybody, frankly, because media doesn't show up on a Saturday morning on a Labor Day weekend. So we ended up having a quite large disaster cascading, of which I was unaware, totally unaware, until we got an email from the Leadership Contest Committee to all candidates. And I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here, but it's just that the council is having a meeting to discuss the demand for an investigation. And we may need all of you candidates to be available for an emergency Zoom call at around 10 o'clock Eastern time. I responded to all, so reply to all is kind of reply to the world. And I said, look, I don't understand why a council meeting to talk about a workplace or some investigation, which isn't something I've ever called for or any of us have ever called for. Why are these two things being linked? I don't understand to this day, Colin, why the two things are linked. The leadership contest is underway. Various people running for leadership have put other aspects of their life on hold to do this. I'm in the enviable position that I've got a job. I mean, I can't say no matter what, the voters of Saanich Gulf Islands may not want to elect a Green after all this, but I'm very committed to the Green Party. I see us electing a lot more MPs in the next election. Anyway, that's a longer story. But we neither went to the media, nor did we make charges that there was an unsafe environment, nor did we think, and nor does our leader, Amita Kuttner, think that there's any reason to stop the leadership contest. So I think, let me identify another problem that I think, besides the people not being all in the same room together, a complete breakdown of communications, because there was never, and I did, as Colin knows, I called Lorraine the morning after the meeting to tell her, because we've been friends for 40 years, just to tell her, you know, I love you, I don't understand, I don't get it. The statement that went from, in the end, didn't go from all 6 candidates, it went from 4 leadership candidates and 1 MP. So depending on how you slice it, 2 MPs, 4 leadership candidates, one of whom wears 2 hats. That's me. I was gobsmacked that this was considered a controversial statement or in any way less than supportive, because it was 200 words. And in the course of 200 words, it said, we support council in 2 different places, support Lorraine in 2 different, and we support Amita Kuttner and want some process that is restorative. And then let's all get together, let's move ahead. So misunderstanding, miscommunication, no matter how you want to slice it, I'm still baffled. Honest to God, I couldn't be more baffled than the way our effort at unity and shutting down media questions by putting 1 statement on Twitter. We didn't do a press release, we didn't do media interviews, we shut down a media storm that was brewing around 1 member from Ontario putting up a poll question on Twitter, should Lorraine be forced to resign? We got rid of that whole controversy and somehow ended up landing in a pile of you know what.
Okay, over to you, Jonathan. Why do you insist on continuing the leadership race? And then Colin had a follow-up question. If you're concerned with how the media spins what has been going on, then why did you go to the media when this problem surfaced yet again? So if you want to address that 2-part question.
I mean, I think in terms of the first question, why are we continuing this leadership race if some, you know, and we've heard through the branches, because again, none of this has been communicated directly to us, but we've heard through the branches that some individuals who were part of organizing the race expressed that they didn't feel this was a safe space. This was not linked to our statement, so we are not aware of that. I feel perfectly safe continuing this race. I know that the same applies to Chad and Simon and Elizabeth and Anna, and I presume Sarah as well. I believe as a party and as an organization, we're perfectly able to chew gum and walk at the same time. Not only that, but I know from having met with some of you and also a number of members throughout the country now that there is a desire on the part of our membership to see this race through. There is a desire to make sure that we can move forward and start preparing as soon as possible for what will arguably be the most important elections of at least my generation. We have someone like Poilievre now, who is the chief or the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and is dead fast on taking us back by a couple of decades. It's so crucial that we have a strong Green team that's able to face to face these storms that are coming, and the sooner the better. And I think we're perfectly able to make sure, and we've already demonstrated that through our commitment to working together, to discussing amongst us, leadership contestants. I mean, we were in Ottawa today and hugging and chanting together side by side. I may be remiss, but I don't think you saw that in 2020 among the leadership contestants back then. I think it's so crucial that we show our unity through this race, and we've been trying to do that consistently throughout this race. Why do we go back to the media? Sorry, the question was why do we go back to the media when this problem?
If you're concerned with how the media spins what has been going on, then why do you go to the media when this problem surfaced yet again?
Well, the truth is the media comes to us and they ask us questions. The media, you know, the Star and the CBC and others have our cell phone numbers. I, as well as many other contestants in this race, have put our jobs on the side to run to become the next leaders of the Green Party of Canada. We're taking, we're putting our life on pause in order to embrace the green values and propose to be of service. And of course, media are interested. I mean, they have our cell phone numbers. They call us. I can't tell you how many times I've had to ignore calls from Alex Palingol, who kept on calling and calling and calling. But there's only so much one can do to hide from media. We're not in the business of hiding from media. We're in the business of meeting with media. They will be asking us very tough questions. And sometimes we have to respond to them, but we'll try through our answers to highlight why the Green Party is essential, why the Green Party is an alternative for Canadians, why it is still continuing the work that Elizabeth and Mike are doing in Parliament, why that is so crucial. And we do that consistently through all of our media interviews. Now, we don't have control over media because we live in a democracy, and media can choose to highlight certain things and not others. In the case of the CBC, David Turton had an interview for 17 minutes with Lorraine and posted the entirety of that interview online. He also had a 17-minute interview with me the day after, and that was never posted online. Why? I don't know. We have to ask David Turton. But that's the reality of where we operate from our standpoint. We're trying our very best to represent the green ideals and the green values and the will of our members, the people that I've met, in BC and Ontario and in Quebec, as best as we can with the national media. And we'll continue to do that because that's what we signed up for.
Can I jump in just to say that when we get media questions that are based on leaked emails or accusations of infighting, I do my very best not to respond at all. I say I'm here because I'm trying to make sure that the green concerns about the climate crisis are heard. And the press conference yesterday was entirely about our priorities in Parliament. My bill to deal with environmental racism and get environmental justice programming is closer now to being passed as law. No media is interested. I talk about what the IPCC has told us about 1.5 degrees and 1.8. My question and question period yesterday was about last week's report in Science about tipping points and events that will occur at as low as 1.8 degrees and even 1.5. That's what I'm talking about. That's not what ends up in the media. But as I said to him many times, Paul Martin once told me that a politician who complains about the media is like a sailor who complains about the sea. I try to avoid talking about the media, but I promise you that when the media comes at us with gossip, I say, I'm not here to discuss gossip.
While you have the mic, Elizabeth, it wasn't a question, but I feel like this group would love to hear, where are we with membership and funds? Trevor's saying that membership and funding are declining. Maybe provide a little bit of background and information in that respect to the group, please.
Yeah. Sorry, John, do you want to go?
Well, I was just writing, in fact, in the chat. But I know for a fact. I mean, Elizabeth and I have been signing a bunch of new people. I've been signing a bunch of new young Quebecers in this, to become members. We've been fundraising actively, and the good news is it's been going fairly well. We've raised good money, and I know that Chad and Anna are also fundraising. I know that they're also signing up new members. So this race is actually creating excitement.
Yeah. That's why I wanted I'm glad you asked the question, Najib, because we don't get a lot of insight into party membership numbers or fundraising numbers until I was, it was, again, this was a subject of a leak that anyone would know I was thinking of running for leadership. But at that point I had to withdraw, but I was working as a volunteer on the fundraising action team. The fundraising emails that, that's how I got to know Najib, by the way. He's also a member of the fundraising action team. We did, we got $50,000 of donations for the one weekend ask around Earth Day. I do think that we don't know how the numbers are going. So my insight to this is only that Dana Taylor and Lorraine, subsequent to Lorraine's resignation, I think it was great that Lorraine and Dana did a town hall where Lorraine walked back a certain amount of the idea that the dream is dead and we can't move on. She's saying, no, we're still a good party and we've got good reason to work on it. But one thing Dana said was that the leadership race has really been good for fundraising, and we're beginning to see money come in. So it's not just Jonathan and me telling you this. Our executive director says in a public meeting, the leadership race has been really good for getting money in the door. So I know that there's a lot of competing narratives out there, and until the leadership race is over and one or more of us of 6 candidates running for leadership are sitting at the council table and able to get information, I'm just looking at, I'm reading tea leaves and looking at what I know firsthand and what I know secondhand from what Dana said publicly. I don't think our membership numbers are holding remarkably steady, and we are bringing in money.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Before I go to Robert, who has bravely put up his hand, but this might be my fault because I was remiss to tell everyone how to raise your hand. You go to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and there's a raise hand button there. Go ahead, Robert. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm from Newfoundland. I first met Elizabeth back in the late 70s when she was a forestry activist and came to Newfoundland because we were spraying the forest with Pedneault and Elizabeth and stuff. Shortly after that, about a year later, I got involved with Frank de Jong, who was probably the first fellow to come from the national organization to try to create a Green Party in Newfoundland. And I was a union rep at the time, so I had business across the province. So we had a little roadshow and met a number of communities. Well, I've been on and off a member of the Green Party, and it is sort of sad to see, what's projected most of the time in the media in the last year. The highlights has been the infighting and structural changes you're trying to create, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, I here in Newfoundland, I don't know if it's somewhat unique kind of a place, but I sort of sense that, we talk about grassroots democracy and participatory democracy and town halls, and maybe there's a few once in a while, but I think personally, and I also relate to what Trevor was saying about what really matters. I mean, what really matters right now, it's hard to get for somebody like myself to get too caught up when you still, even I attended this meeting, there's been a lot of discussion on the structural issues that need to be changed, and I know we need a Green Party, and it has to be one, but I guess in terms of trying to get grassroots people interested and involved, I actually think there has to be a grassroots movement first, because here in Newfoundland over the years, you get a call, from Marlene or something. We got to get some folks together. There's going to be an election, but there's no movement. There's no behind it here. Maybe more so in BC or Toronto or places where there's strong environmental movements. But here in Newfoundland, I mean, the environmental activism is probably at an all-time low, right now in Newfoundland. So
thank you. Thanks, Robert. I think that, we often forget about Newfoundland, so thank you for your insight. Do you have a question, Robert?
Yeah, my question is, what really matters? And what I'm finding now after a lifetime, a pretty long period of time involved in environmental activism, I think most of the time was finger in the dike stuff, not really dealing with the systemic issues. And the systemic issues are still being ignored. I mean, I'm starting to become tuned into Michael Dowd and Joanne Macy, and these folks are talking about post-doom, that actually we are doomed now. So what are we going to do? We're trying to engage people in the grassroots movement. We got to tell them the truth that, look, climate change is much more horrific than people realize. I mean, we're facing maybe the worst possible storm this weekend in Newfoundland. I mean, it's a reality. And so people don't want to get, okay, we got to get involved with the Green Party and get involved in all kinds of structural issues and
thank you, Robert.
Blah, 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 blah. So
thanks, Robert. I think
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, well, I just want to have a little. I don't like, I know this is important. You guys you're running this party. You need to be doing what you're doing. But I don't particularly like somebody telling me, okay, but get up. One little final thing I'd like to say is that I'm a bit disturbed about that whole kind of approach to it. But anyhow, what I was going to say, I forgot because you told me, okay, Robert, that's it, go on. So it's not that important anyhow, I guess. Anyhow.
It's just in the interest of time, Robert. And I think Elizabeth wants to respond to you. I think
yeah. Well, first of all, I'm just so happy to see you again. We worked together over so many years on so many things. But what I wanted to say is, in Parliament, I don't see my job as being a green for any one part of the country. And I am proud of the fact that we're the only federal party that from the beginning stood up against Muskrat Falls and said, this is going to destroy the habitat for caribou. This is a violation of Inuit rights. This project is a non-starter. For those of you in BC who don't know Muskrat Falls was the truth that went first to prove that Site C would be a disaster. Muskrat Falls did it first. And when there were hearings in St. John's about what happened in Muskrat Falls, I was there at the mic to talk about the travesty of Muskrat Falls. So I apologize that we don't just always, but I would also say on issues for Newfoundland and Labrador, we've been there as Greens, but what we failed to do, particularly in 2021, I can't understand it. I know we had a candidate for every single EDA in Newfoundland and Labrador right after the writ dropped. And for some reason, and I don't know what happened in headquarters, it's one of the things I want to find out. I hope I'll become your next leader with Jonathan and we can get answers. But for those of you who don't know, after all the hard work of so many people in Newfoundland and Labrador, we didn't have a single Green candidate there. And I don't know why that was, because I know there were people willing to run in every single riding there. So all I can say is I agree with you. But when we get to the question of do we talk doom, do we say it's too late? My personal belief is it's not too late. The science tells us that the way I've put it in Parliament many times is we're standing on the very edge of too late. We're not, it's not too late. And so I don't want to go on too much, but God, is good to see you and please stick with us.
I want to also, it's sort of along the same vein, Elizabeth, Allison's been patiently waiting for me to ask this question. What can the new leaders do to unify all the various organizations which are espousing climate action?
I'd just like to touch a bit on the point that Robert raised, because I think it's important in terms of doom and whatnot. I think that's one other place where Elizabeth and I are complementary, but also slightly different. Elizabeth is a diehard optimist. I've been lucky or unlucky enough to go to places where that went well beyond the edge on a number of ways, and I know how terrifying that is, how atrocious that is, and who suffers first. And the people that suffer first are always the people who are that least responsible. And now, of course, we've seen with Pakistan, and we're seeing now with Atlantic Canada, which is, where the federal government has invested far too little over the past years in ensuring that communities there are ready to face what we know is coming. We know, and we've known for a while, that there will be more storms. We know that there's coastal erosion. We know that communities will suffer, will be cut off from key infrastructure, and yet where is the money? Where are the investments? That is why we need Greens in Parliament. I come to this, and I'm coming to the Green Party, and I'm coming to politics now because I believe that the role of government is to create contingencies, and to not only to create them, but to fund them. They're only now, the Liberals, after 8 years in power, are only finishing their adaptation strategy, for their national adaptation strategy. And it's not funded yet. It's high time we invest in securing our communities from coast to coast to coast, because we know there will be more fires. We know there will be more storms. Investors have been banking on the doors of our government, saying, look, very soon we won't be able to reimburse people. And yet, where's the action? Where are the investments? So, I think it's crucial, and especially for places like Newfoundland. And I'm from Quebec, but I've spent the last, part of the last 10 years living in small coastal communities in Norway, fishing communities who are also experiencing similar issues, storms and hard weather, and they're good, strong people. But they live with nature, and they see nature all around them, and we need to harness into that. Someone was asking about our connection to Mother Nature. I think finding a way to talk about this environment that everyone sees. My family is from Lac Saint Jean. It's a place where forestry has been going on for many years, but people love to go out and fish and hunt. and they do see that there are less animals. They do see that there is less fish. They see that the natural world is changing. So we need to tap into this love of nature that people have out there and say, look, like you're very close to losing it now. That freedom, that peace that keeps you in these communities or brought you to these communities is about to be washed away because of decisions or lack of decisions and courage in Ottawa. No, I'm talking too much, but the second question from Allison was, what was the question from Allison, sorry? Najib?
What can the new leaders do to unify all the various organizations which are espousing climate action?
Oh,
I'll take, sorry.
Go for it, Elizabeth.
I'll take a credit because part of the problem is it's that the movement and environmental groups that are espousing climate action won't be organized by a political party. Their relationship with us is more than arm's length because of CRA rules. So it's frustrating. I mean, in the 2019 election, when over 1 million Canadians marched for climate action, and we were the only party with an honest plan that said how we're going to, shut down the oil sands by 2030, make sure we've reduced emissions. I won't go through all the elements of it, but it was a very strong plan. And we didn't get a single environmental group saying, oh, wow, only the Greens have a real plan. You got a lot of environmental groups who are hedging their bets because they're terrified of conservatives winning. So they try to be political instead of smart. And they don't stay in their lane, like saying climate action now, and that's the best plan. They say, oh, well, the Green plan isn't particularly realistic. It's like saying at the beginning of the Second World War, Neville Chamberlain was more realistic because you could surrender to Hitler. That's very realistic. Fighting him was pretty unrealistic. So that's how I feel about how hard it is. Now we can unify a lot of Canadians, and I think cross-country work, especially if we're able to gather again. By the way, don't forget what Sandra Savage, the Minister of Energy for Alberta, said when COVID arrived. She said, that's great. This is the best time to build a pipeline because all of those environmentalists can't protest and gather together to stop us. Oh, it turned out to be sadly true. Today, the climate strike on Ottawa was the biggest crowd of climate strikers on Parliament Hill that I've seen since before COVID. But let's assume we can get out in person again, and we can have rallies again, and we can mobilize people again. That's where the inspirational voice and the motivational voice of Greens, and also saying we're taking your voice inside to Parliament Hill, and we're not going to let the incrementalists and the fakery of we'll do a climate tax one day and drill Bay du Nord and get 6 billion more barrels of oil out from under the ocean floor, and we'll build TMX. I mean, we are banging the drum every single day to reverse those bad decisions to get real climate action. And if we can galvanize that message well enough, we'll get more mobilization. The groups themselves are not going to join with us, but perhaps we can get them to echo us.
Okay, before I go to Carrie, Jonathan, do you want to weigh in on Allison's question?
Yeah, just very shortly. I think there's a general distrust on the part of a lot of young people to when it comes to politics. A lot of young people nowadays are disengaging from political parties because they feel that they're not represented, and they feel that they're not understood, and they don't, in fact, quite often understand the very system that we evolve in. And they are pissed at the fact that, when they go out to vote, often for more progressive options, they still end up with oftentimes a conservative or status quo MP, because we live in this first past the post system. So I think we need to reach out more to young people, but we also need to talk with these organizations in such a way that they understand the need for political action, organized political action. I remember, and it's always going to stick with me. I was in Egypt during the Arab Spring in 2011, and there was a very real desire on the part of the demonstrators on the square to to not have any political leadership. They wanted equal representation on the part of everyone. They didn't want to follow any sort of given party or organize amongst themselves, because they were so pissed with having lived under a dictatorship for so many years. They didn't believe in the necessity of organizing politically. And then what happened? Well, they had elections after the fall of Mubarak. And if you'll recall, the only the party that won these elections were the Muslim Brotherhood, because they were the one organized structure that for many years had been providing services to average Egyptians. And then they got angry, and then they protested against it. And who took over? The army, because it was the only other organized structure out there that was able to exercise power. So I think when it comes to climate action, it's so crucial that climate and environmentalists these days understand the realities of power. And that is where, as a political party, we can help them. We can help them and provide solutions, but we need to engage in that work. And it's education work as well. How does Parliament function? How is our system modeled? And how can we leverage their memberships, their strengths, the information and their advocacy efforts in order to create political change?
Thanks, Jonathan. Kerry, go ahead. You have the mic.
Yeah, am I live?
Yes.
Nice to see you again, Najib and Elizabeth. This is actually, I'm directing it to Jonathan, and actually you kind of segued into what I was going to ask about. The thing that was discussed a couple times already, which was sort of a division. So I'm in Calgary, for those who don't know. A division between, and I'm new to the Green Party. I'm 57, but I've only been in the Green Party about 5 years. So I'm new but old. And there seems to be an ongoing division, and I've heard it here as well, between people who are, we need to save the world, the green world, which is an obvious statement. And the other half, because let's be honest, the last election was actually an election. It wasn't stolen. It was an election by people who wanted to place more emphasis on the questions, the social questions, which come up as diversity, but are not just about diversity. But so it seemed like a division between how the Green Party was seen. And I know in the Vision Green, there's a great deal said about social diversity and development and the network. And so, Jonathan, my question is around the fact that how do we manage to bring the youth, because it seems to me it's the youth that have a much more focus on the diversity, justice, climate justice, but following and as a result of the social justice. And how do you see the Green Party dealing with that? Because if we don't deal with that, if we just choose one, we're going to lose half of the country, it seems to me. So that's kind of a question, I believe.
Yeah, I think young people and also a lot of Green members and Elizabeth and I understand that the climate crisis that we're faced with, the environmental crisis that we're faced with, is the product and the result of capitalism. And capitalism is also the result, or at the root of, the social inequities that we're seeing right now throughout our country. We've had throughout COVID now a growth of inequality from coast to coast to coast. And we live, the very existence of our nation is based on extractivism. It was built.
Jonathan, sorry, can I suggest and ask, is just a recognition of the inequities, perhaps? Not that they've developed more, but we recognize them more.
I think that they've clearly developed more. A handful of people have made enormous amounts of money during COVID and amassed money, not just in Canada, but of course globally. There's a need to address these systemic questions. I think if one is to solve the climate crisis, one has to look at what is the good life. What are we in this life for? Are we in this life for to be pushed into a system that squeezes us from the moment we enter school till the moment we die, in order to accumulate money that nowadays isn't even enough to make ends meet? Or is it to have an ability to contribute to our communities, to spend time with our loved ones, to look at the natural world around us and want to take care of it, because we're not distracted constantly by the beating drums of get to work, get to work, get to work, accumulate, accumulate, spend, spend, consume, consume. This is, this is what most of us nowadays in this economy live for. And that's unsustainable. That's inhuman in many ways. And we need to have that conversation. I think Canada is ripe for that conversation. And I think the Green Party is exactly the political party that can bring it forward.
Elizabeth, do you want to weigh in on Carrie's question?
No, just to say that number one, Carrie, welcome to the Green Party. You're very young. I'm 68. I'll just say it. By the way, that's one of the things we haven't done. Jonathan and I as a team haven't been able to present we have presented ourselves. We're both talking. But I like the fact that Jonathan's the youngest candidate in this race. I'm the oldest candidate. I'm at 68 with 2 new knees. I'm under warranty. I'm still good for a while. I think I've got tons of energy. So I just want to say that, because the media says besides, aren't you awfully old? No. Have you looked at Joe Biden, by the way? So never mind. I feel very, very blessed to be working with Jonathan, because one of the things we both agree on is that this sacred orb of creation, Mother Earth, is all we've got. And we have got to, and it was, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, who said we have to stop being at war with Mother Earth. We are literally at war with Mother Earth. And I would say, I agree with everything Jonathan says about the drive to consume, but I'd also say our economy we need to embrace degrowth, right? That's a steady state economy is what we need. And actually, we've got really good economics behind this. I'll just reference a York University professor, Peter Victor, in his book, Managing Without Growth by Disaster or Design. It's better if we do it by design and figure out how we have more well-being and more deeper and more meaningful quality of life. So I always like to turn that word sacrifice on its head and say, it's not a sacrifice to rethink the way we live so that, we can, it's a Gandhian phrase that I really like that we put into the Earth Charter years ago, which is that we must never make the mistake of believing that having more can replace being more. So I think we are a movement that wants to embrace youth, but I really think our demographic, by the way, while I was talking about being old, I'm some of you've heard me say this before, I'm now a cranky 68-year-old version of Greta Thunberg. I'm super cranky because I'm pissed, because I've been working for 40 years, governments have known, and they've ignored and they've procrastinated and they've come up with these pleasant bromides. And now it's net zero by 2050. And people say to me, it's so wonderful. Even the oil sands companies agree. Sure, they agree, because this is their ticket to never having to change. So anyway, I'm ranting. I'll stop there, Najib. I don't know if that answers the question, but I apologize for the rant. We really do need to have radicalized grandparents that decide, I'm not going to sit here in a rocking chair and until I die day. No, thank you. I'm going to make change while we still have time.
There we go. Radicalize your grandparents. I just want to do a quick time check. I'm okay to keep going. It looks like we still have lots of people in attendance, so we have a queue of questions. Jonathan, Elizabeth, you're okay to keep going. Just give me a thumbs up if you're good to keep going. Yes, Jonathan, you're good. Okay, Cami, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Cami and I'm here on Vancouver Island, so the other coast from all you from Newfoundland. Certainly very much feeling the impacts of the climate crisis here. I own and operate a farm as well, and we've suffered quite a bit here in this province. But my question to both of you really is about the new Conservative leader and what your plan or strategy or how you plan to interact with him, and in particular, his supporters. What do you think are attracting young people to him? It's deeply concerning, the number of young people involved in that movement now, dare I say. So how would you tackle that issue as leader or co-leader?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you so much for that question, and it's a question that actually is bringing me into politics now. I think there's a lot of anger throughout the country, and I want to recognize that. There's a lot of disappointment with the way our institutions are run. There's a lot of disappointment with the promises that have been made by Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, who's been again promising PR, who's been promising reduced inequalities, promising a brilliant sunny future for people my age and your age and our up and coming generations. And sadly enough, we've seen none of that materialize. Quite the opposite. We've seen that government use our taxpayers' money to fund the building of pipelines and to now expand oil exploitation off the coast of Newfoundland. We've seen a government turn around on PR. We've seen a government that's been consistently behind the curve on every emergency or unplanned situation that arose during their tenure. I think someone needs to call Poilievre for the fraud that he is. He's been in Parliament for 18 years. He's been Stephen Harper's loyal supporter and defender as he further integrated Canada into a global economy, which is in parts responsible for the inflation that we're now experiencing. He's been advocating, of course, and you've all seen that for more bitcoins and all of these other digital currencies, which we're forced to see now that have not been so efficient. And he's in effect he's reaping the fruits that he sowed himself. Of the anger that he sowed himself through his support of the Harper policies, and sadly Trudeau did nothing to fix these systemic issues. I think we can, as a Green Party, propose an alternative, propose an alternative discourse, bring forward new voices that truly constitute a change in politics. Change in our institution, change in our way of looking at politics won't come from a guy who's been in Parliament for 18 years and been in government creating the very policies that he's now turning around to criticize. I think we need to call him up for that and on that. Yeah.
Can I jump in just to say, Cami, I know you're in Cowichan Valley, or I don't know if it's Cobble Hill exactly, but I just wanted to say, right not too far from you in Duncan, we have a prime example of something terrifying happening in our society. And I don't know, I'm not going to give you a pat answer right now, but for those of you who don't know, they were sometimes described as two brothers, but they were actually two out of a set of triplets, young 22-year-old white kids that were brought up in Duncan, well-fed, well-educated, and they got captured by right-wing social media and gun culture. It got reported across Canada as a failed bank robbery, but it wasn't a failed bank robbery. Those kids were armed to the teeth. They had on body armor. They had explosives in their car. They had weapons to take out as many cops as they could before they were killed. They never really tried to rob that bank. So the bank was in Saanich. In my riding, the kids grew up on Vancouver Island, and they were brothers, as I said, but that bank robbery, their intention to kill a lot of people, and what was going on their social media when the cops went to look, there's a lot like what every time I hear about a mass shooting, the next line tends to be a 22-year-old man unknown to police before this incident. So we got to get at the algorithms, we've got to get at social media, and we've got to figure out how not to demonize people with whom we don't agree, which is tricky because we have to call Pierre Poilievre out for not just playing footsie with white supremacists, embracing them. We also have to figure out how to make sure that a segment of society that felt and does feel that nobody cares, the future that climate activist kids look at and feel eco-grief. Another segment of youth look at this and think, I got no future. I don't see me getting a job. I don't see me getting a house. Whose fault is it? Well, all the other, as defined by the right-wing white supremacist gun culture media. We have to get at that, and we have to find a way to give those young men some lifeline before they grab the lie of fascism, because fascism is on the rise even in our own country, and that puts democracy at risk, and we have to figure it out. I don't have pat answers, but I'm very aware that this is a challenge that people who are grown-ups need to confront. And it's not easy, and Justin Trudeau has not helped. He tried to increase that as a wedge issue for last year's election. And anyway, we have to figure it out. And I think desperately we need green voices in the public sphere who are willing to talk honestly about the challenges democracy faces.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Ralph, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was just chatting in the chat here. My phone's about to die. Hi from Northern Manitoba, everybody. Three-time federal candidate, one-time provincial candidate. I just wanted to say thank you very much for having this town hall. I did notice I don't always get all the emails that these things are happening. I was actually made aware of this by Dave Nickars out of Winnipeg. So, you know, send out the emails more often. I would like to get, I don't always have the chance to do this, but feel inspired again just for listening the last 20 minutes. So just want to let you know I'm going to go online and, you know, top up my donation for the year here, just so that we can keep Greens in office and leadership contestants, you know, out there and bringing new hope to the next wave of Greens rolling in. I know it's been a rough couple of years for a lot of Greens, and this is just like a breath of fresh air for me. So I just wanted to say thank you. So I don't really have a question other than to say I'm going to go and log in now and do some donating, and thanks for doing this, and keep them up and keep doing more. And that's that.
Thanks, Ralph. We will do, and someone else asked me this question directly as well. There's more town halls scheduled. I'm going to do a similar town hall with Chad and Anna next Friday, and then hopefully the other candidates as well. The EDAs are also scheduling town halls, so check with your EDA if they plan on holding a town hall as well with the candidates. If you want us to reach out, I'm also co-chair of the EDA empowerment team. So if you want me to reach out to your EDA and encourage them and help them set up a town hall, I'm happy to do that. You can reach out to me as well. And then also, before I go to Bronwyn, just if you want to throw your email in the chat, we'll make sure that you're kept abreast of all the events as well. If you want to throw your email in the chat as well. Go ahead, Bronwyn.
Sure.
Sorry, did you call my name?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I think we need to call out the NDP as much as we need to call out the Conservatives, because they're, you know, such hypocrites, and people just, you know, because they don't think we're viable as a party, they cling to the climate killing NDP. And I can understand that, but I think there's a way in which we have to do better somehow in differentiating ourselves. And the other thing is just a comment going back to what people Elizabeth was saying, both about the economy and about structures. I recently joined the Institute of Othering and Belonging in California. And there was a great webinar where they were talking about that we have to stop talking about the economy as if it's something that is implacable, that's kind of far away, that we can never change, we can never participate in, and that's predetermined. So they're really suggesting we say our economy, that it belongs to us, not, you know, people, not just to the 1% or people so far away. And I thought that was incredibly interesting. So I'm going to start trying to say that, our economy, and take it back and make it central, that it belongs to us, it belongs to people. Thank you. And thank you for this great town hall.
Thank you. Any comments, Elizabeth or Jonathan, on Bronwyn's comments, or even Ralph as well?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
thank you, everyone. And you're so right, and it's such a I think it's a beautiful way of putting it. It is our economy. None of I'm of the belief that nobody anywhere is able to form themselves and be a self-made man or woman. Everyone, and especially in a place like Canada, benefits from the stability, the institutions, the funding, the social peace that we all contribute to. And it is so crucial that these individuals who are able to make more money perhaps than they need, give back to ensure that that economy, our society can continue to produce such new ventures. It is our economy. I think that was very beautifully said. So thank you for that.
And I saw a comment from Sarah, and I don't know Sarah because of context here was just the name, but I'll just say that's always my point. We write the rules for the economy. At the end of the Second World War, at Bretton Woods, all the governments around the world met and said, okay, we need some new rules because we're changing our economic ideas. We have so many people in politics who act as though the economy is the real world and it has real rules. But then there's this imaginary construct that is a biosphere with atmospheric rules of physics and chemistry. Sorry, that's the real world. All this economic mumbo jumbo can be rewritten anytime. Exactly, Trevor. Social contract. Made up, we make up the rules. We can rewrite the rules.
Thanks. Ev, go ahead. You've been waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, there might be barky dogs in the background. Hi, my name is Evelyn, two-time federal candidate from Calgary Shepherd. So great to see Carrie Rutherford here, who was a candidate in the next riding over to me in Forest Lawn. Also, Calgary is the home of Pierre Polyev. Lots of interesting things, pipelines, all those things. So my question is, what is the Green Party's plan to support candidates in ridings like mine all over, the prairies, places where our EDAs are running on fumes? The difference between the 2019 and the 2021 campaigns was very stark and very, very alarming. And it's going to lead to a lot of issues in terms of recruiting candidates going forward. In 2019, people were mostly polite. I did get some doors slammed in my face. I thought that's pretty normal. 2021, the hostility was very high at the doors. Lots of doors slammed in my face. We had candidates who got death threats. We had candidates who got spat on and screamed at. And there's people like Victor Lau, who's the deputy leader of the SAS Greens, racialized like me. He won't go door knocking alone. He will only go door knocking with his white wife. And so these are like real issues that are facing Greens, especially in places like Alberta and the prairies. And so like aside from just like the issues of the Greens, like what are we going to do about this?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I don't know if Jonathan wants to go first. Do you want to? You want to, yeah.
Oh, you can go.
Okay, I'll just say, look, I wanted to thank you, Ev, because I mentioned earlier when talking to Bob in Corner Brook, like even as bad as things were in 2021 with the lack of candidates at the time the writ dropped, I'm so grateful to so many volunteers because we stepped up, a whole bunch of us as volunteers. So we can't go into an election campaign with so few people running. And you were one that really helped. We pulled together volunteer Zoom meetings for Alberta. We pulled together volunteer meetings, Newfoundland, Labrador, and certainly for BC, and just tried to make sure we could fill every slot for candidates. But what you're saying is also that it's not just to have a candidate, it's also to protect them when they're out there campaigning. This is a fact. This is, again, I think the social fabric of Canada, the thing I was mentioning to Cammie about the alienated young white man. I mean, we've got something very unhealthy and dangerous happening. When Chrystia Freeland had that guy follow her as she made her way to an elevator, I mean, everybody's seen the video. She turned around when he called out her name. She had no security around. She turned around, oh, hi. And then he starts yelling obscenities at her as she makes her way into an elevator. This is, I think it's a bigger problem than the one we're experiencing as Greens. And especially women candidates and racialized candidates, we need to figure out, we do need to go door to door because that's the way we meet people. But we need to make sure that there are teams. And in terms of recruitment and building the party, fortunately, we have a couple of years till the next election. So I'm torn all the time. Unfortunately, we don't have an election coming up soon enough because of the Liberal NDP deal to make sure that we can force the Liberals into more climate action before 2025, which is the IPCC new window, which is why I'm doing this, by the way. If the IPCC had not issued a report on April 4th that said, if we do not peak emissions well before 2025, we will miss the chance to hold to 1.5 or 2. And 2 days later, Trudeau approves Pedneault. So that's why I'm doing this. And I'm so glad and grateful and blessed to be able to do it with Jonathan. But because of that deal, it cuts both ways. That deal means we have to make a real impact in Parliament before the next election that forces the Liberals to do more. Since we're in a Zoom call, I think I can say one of these will really help us is if we emerge strongly. I think there are other MPs who will cross the floor and join us because they're so upset with their own parties. That would be the kind of pain and impact politically that could move Trudeau and Singh for that matter. But the fact that we have time means, and this is where I'll turn over to Jonathan, we plan to split the workload. And I've never been so, I don't know if I've ever been so happy in my life as when Jonathan said, I think the part of the workload I want is the internal stuff and getting the party ready for the next election and making sure. So I'll turn it over to Jonathan for how that's going to look, because I'm going to be really busy in Parliament. I will tour the country every chance I get to talk to people in workshops and build up our strength. But Jonathan.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I want to be careful, or not careful. I want to be aware of the time because it's getting quite late here, and especially in the Atlantic. Look, I mean, I think it's crucial that our candidates receive support from the Central Party. I've been sent to difficult areas in the past as part of my work, and had access to mental health support if I need it. It's extraordinarily sad that we've come to a point now where, in order to engage in politics in Canada, we have to take these factors into consideration, and that is certainly something that needs to be combated at the national level. But that's something, of course, people at the local level are experiencing. There are elections now ongoing in Quebec where a number of death threats were made also to racialized candidates, and that is completely unacceptable. Sadly, this appears to be the reality that we have to navigate nowadays. And I think it's crucial that our party has a responsibility towards anyone that's willing to bear and wear our colors, and we need to make sure that we fundraise for that and that we have the appropriate support to help all of our candidates navigate these tricky waters nowadays. I think that's true of our EDAs in general as well. We need to make sure that we have candidates that are nominated well in advance of an election. I mean, Elizabeth and I will work with EDAs to make sure that happens. We are cognizant of the fact that we do best in terms of electoral results when our candidates are out knocking on doors early on, and when they have a chance of getting and being known by the community before the writ. So support to our EDA, support to our candidates will be crucial. I'm not in Parliament right now and won't be until the next election. And so part of my work, if not the essential part of my work, will be continuing to travel the country as I've done now for since the beginning of this campaign, to meet with all of you, to meet with our EDAs, to meet with social and environmental groups throughout the country and try and build a coalition that will allow us to gain more seats in the next election. I see that as a crucial part of my work. Some might want to focus on their own ridings in order to get themselves elected. I see the role of a leader as someone who builds teams and someone who puts the interest of others ahead of their own. And that's what I've always been doing. and what I will continue to do if elected as leader. Of course, I certainly want to join Elizabeth in the House and will endeavor to do that, but it's crucial that before we put the cart in front of the horses, that we have a functioning party that's able to elect as many members, and at that point I hope to be so lucky as to be a part of them. Now, I saw Maureen's question, and perhaps we can wrap up with that because I know a lot of people are leaving and it's getting late, but you were asking, Maureen, about the term eco-socialism, and that's not a term that's a term that I'm comfortable with. That is not how I would describe the Green Party nowadays. I think we have to present our. I'm someone who's always has always been a bit wary of labels. There is one label, however, that I'm very proud to be wearing, and it is green, and I will be wearing that label. And I think we need to define through our interventions what the policies of the Greens are, instead of painting ourselves in any given corner. But these policies are resolutely, sorry, I'm putting the emphasis in the wrong places in English sometimes. They're resolutely progressive, and we'll continue to communicate them. Elizabeth.
I'm waiting for direction from Najib, because I got my instructions from Najib some time ago. Don't jump on questions, wait for me to tell you. So I'm waiting.
No, I did put in the chat that we'll take Maureen's question, and then I'll let you guys do a closing comment.
Okay.
So
well,
go ahead,
I'm very comfortable. I've always been. It's really funny how my reputation in the Green Party has been formed by others as a kind of a mythology. I mean, I've been a radical activist my whole life. First time I was tear gassed, I was 13. It's not that I went out of my way to get tear gassed at 13. I was just with my mom at the Chicago convention. And I've had a lot of experience of recognizing that democracy hangs by a thread without a lot of hard work, and that any society that looks like it's a nice place and you go to the cop on the beat if you need help, in a blink of an eye, you can turn around and realize, oh, I remember my mom squeezing my hand as we were walking away from the police riot in Chicago, and we were there because we were peace delegate. Well, I was too young to be peace delegate, but as we walked away from the quick, brutal conditions in Chicago, my mom squeezed our hands, me and the little boys that were the children of another delegate, and said, "Don't worry, kids, we'll be okay as long as we don't see a policeman." That was, one of those shocker moments, right? So I've had an experience of many things in my life have made me first and foremost an activist, and I now am driven by the climate crisis. I find to be described as a socialist or an eco-socialist, but the point is, in a leadership race, when people say, "I'm going to take the party over here," do you know what party this is? This is the Green Party. The leader is the spokesperson for the policies that are developed through the membership. And if the membership develops policies and wants us to say, "This is what you're going to say now," and I've had to be, as leader of the party in the 2019. I know I've been accused by the sort of eco-socialist Facebook crowd that, I actually saw it in Toronto Star, that my political views were defined by the slogan in the 2019 election: not left, not right, but straight ahead. And the communications team came to me and said, "This is the slogan." And I said, "Oh, I hate it." They said, "Oh, no, but it's great. It tests really well. We've done focus groups." I said, "Oh, I hate it." So finally, I said, "All right." I mean, obviously I had no role. I said, "Well, okay, just don't expect me to ever say it." So I got a label on my head of right winger or whatever, not left, not. My favorite take on that, by the way, for the Toronto Greens, Christine, you'll remember this, was Chris Tolley, who was one of the candidates who in our debriefs after the campaign said, "Yeah, not left, not right, not sure." Well, that's one thing I hope you'll see from Jonathan and me together, is that we're really deeply entrenched in green values, which social justice, grassroots democracy, respect for diversity, environmental sustainability, all of the elements and human rights. These are all things that are derived from the Earth Charter. And that's where I'm at every single day, every question that comes up is, how do we redefine our relationship to Mother Earth and redefine our relationship to each other in ways that defy any label, but certainly reject exploitation, extractivism, colonialism, and say, I'm here because I'm an earthling, and my fundamental allegiance is to Mother Earth. And if we don't fix this in the next very short period of time, we'll be responsible as a species for the greatest crime that's ever been committed of ecocide. And that's where I'm coming from, and that's why I'm doing this.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Closing comments, and also Maureen asked, and I'm sure both of you will answer this, how can we help? How can we help your campaign? If you want to address that in your closing remarks, go ahead, John.
Well, you're already helping by being here and engaging with us and asking us some tough questions. We know that there are lots of questions throughout our movement and in the membership in general right now, and these questions need to be addressed if we are to learn and heal and grow together. I think it's so crucial that we together, whoever wins this election, this leadership race, it's crucial that together we form a united party that really brings your concerns, your enthusiasm, your worries to the front in Parliament. That's why we're engaged in politics. We're engaged in politics for something that is bigger than ourselves, and that's a cause, and that's the cause that we're espousing. I won't talk too much, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for asking these tough questions. Keep them coming. I'll put my email address in the chat. Of course, we accept donations, and we hope to be able to visit all of you. I'll be in the Maritimes next week and in Alberta in a couple of weeks. I hope I have a chance to meet with you and drink a beer or share a meal or a cup of tea, a cup of coffee with you all. But don't hesitate to reach out, share the word. But we're in there for you. We're in there to serve this party, and regardless of the outcome, we'll be there. This is bigger than ourselves, and yeah, thanks for coming.
I'll just close. I won't take a lot of time. I'm so grateful to Jonathan for being willing to take a leap of faith and be my partner in putting together a co-leadership team. It does work in steps. It's not that we're decreeing anything. So for details, the part of our website that says, here's the nitty gritty, walks through how we do this under our Constitution, how we hope to be able to get the Green Party back. And I tell media, and I believe this from the bottom of my heart, that the narrative that'll get people back to voting Green is the amazing comeback of the Green Party. Oh my God, they're going to elect people everywhere. They're going to have a full caucus. Media loves knocking you down. But then if you survive and bounce back, they love that story too. So that's our story. The amazing comeback of the amazing Green Party electing Paul Manley and Nanaimo ladies. And by the way, he's running for city council, so you can send him some money to help with the city council run right now. Got to elect a Green in Victoria. That one's ready to go. Definitely got to take Fredericton back, Mike Morris and Kitchener Center. There are ridings in this country that will go Green, and we can have a big breakthrough in Quebec. I think it's very significant that of 6 leadership candidates, 3 are from Quebec. And I'd be in favor of making sure they're all elected to Parliament. We have to work hard to get Chad elected and Simon elected. And obviously Jonathan elected as co-leader of the Greens with me. And I am committed to that goal. So I'm grateful to all of you for being here. I will say the way you can help us, just if you hear something like, oh, ask us directly. If you hear somebody sniping around something I've alleged to have done over the years, because the mythology around things I've done is entertaining but not accurate, please feel free to ask me tough, direct questions. And I put my personal email in the chat. I'm really serious. I'll call. We'll do a Zoom with your EDA. There's nothing as important as direct one-on-one communications to rebuild this party, because it's going to take a lot of love and it's going to take a lot of forgiveness. And it isn't, I believe it's not that hard, actually. Jonathan and I believe this is something that can and will be done in short order. And by the way, thank the other Greens around you. Your counselor in Alberta, Natalie Odd, she could use a lot of love right now. Send her a note saying, thank you for your service. We really appreciate it. We're looking for a representative for the BC Greens. We don't have a BC Green on federal council right now. There'll be a council election coming up in October. Think about who you know who could be a BC rep on the federal council. We also have a hole in Ontario where we need an Ontario rep. We need a rep in New Brunswick. Anyway, these shouldn't be such hard jobs. They shouldn't be thankless. We definitely need to thank the people who are doing that work while we as leadership candidates do our best. And certainly Jonathan and I as a team, I hope you'll help us by telling people you plan to vote for us. And I hope you'll help us by encouraging people to donate. And that's all I want to say. And those of you who have donated, love you so much. I'd call you out by name to thank you, but it would distract us from our final moment. But I'll just put up my thank you so much.
And thank you both, and thank you everyone for attending. I think this has been a very fruitful and informational session. And again, drop your email into the chat, and we'll make sure you know of other town halls that happening. And I'm sure this won't be the last one with Elizabeth and Jonathan. I think there's probably a lot of pent-up demand for more of these, and we'll try to do as many as possible. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. And for those of you out in the Maritimes, please stay safe, and our thoughts are with all of you. And hopefully we'll all reconvene soon again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.